Okay, and here we are to finish up culture and religion in Eurasia and North Africa, 500 BCE to 500 CE. And we'll wrap this up with the birth of Christianity with Buddhist comparisons. Okay, let's talk about the lives of the founders. So Siddhartha Gautama was royal, but Jesus was from a lower class family. But both became spiritual seekers. They were mystics in some sense. They claimed personal experience of another level of reality. And they based their life's work on their religious experiences. So this is like an encounter with a higher level of reality. Jesus and the Buddha came from different social backgrounds, but both had a very similar and profound encounter with a higher level of reality and taught a path to personal salvation. Now, both were wisdom teachers. They challenged the conventional values. They urged the renunciation of wealth. They stressed love or compassion as the basis of morality and called for a personal transformation of their followers. So both are preaching messages of love. Both taught a message that would put love for one's fellow man or even one's enemy at the center. And Jesus' miracles and dangerous social critique, while the Buddha did not create a social conflict and did not discuss the issues of gods and the supernatural, Jesus was said to have performed numerous miracles and even gave sermons that challenged the social injustices and inequalities of the Roman Empire. Okay, some important differences between these two. Jesus had a Jewish tradition of a single personal deity, and his teachings were more social and political than Gautama's. Jesus was active for about 3 years. Gautama was active for over 40 years. And Jesus was eventually executed as a criminal, while Gautama died of old age. Now, essentially, both created new religions, and their followers eventually transformed them into gods. So while both the Buddha and Jesus wanted to reform Hindu and Jewish traditions, they're not trying to create new religions per se. However, after their death, their followers did exactly this and turned these two teachers into godlike figures. Now, Christianity becomes a world religion. St. Paul was central to the spread of the Christian faith. He was sent out on envoys, established churches, and oversaw the rules of this new community of believers. And so this process really began with him. And women had more opportunities, but early still reflected patriarchy of the time. Early converts were typically women, and those of the urban lower class. And there was this huge attraction of these miracle stories and the attraction of Christian care for each other and each other's well-being. So while Paul and others were openly hostile to women in the church, the new faith did provide new opportunities for many women in the Roman Empire. And Jesus' social message attracted many converts from those lower social orders. And while the modern era Christianity became synonymous with Europe in its first few centuries, the faith was strongest in Southwest Asia and North Africa, with churches, monasteries, and other institutions spread through the Roman infrastructure of cities and roads beyond into their neighboring lands. So let's talk about the spread of Christianity. Paul spread Christianity to modern Turkey and Syria. Now, Syria and Persia were the heartlands of the church in the East, with their own organization and their own liturgy. And Armenia was the first place where rulers actually adopted Christianity as a state religion. And Syrian and Persian missionaries brought Christianity to southern India and Central Asia. And by 570 CE, some Arabs had actually become Christians. And the Coptic Church emerged in Egypt. This is the Christian church in Egypt. And North Africa furnished intellectuals and even martyrs for the sake of Christianity. And during the 4th century, Christianity became the state religion in Axum, which is where modern Eritrea, and Ethiopia are located in eastern Africa. And Axum Christianity is linked to the Coptic Church, but they use a different Ge'ez language. And eventually, Christianity becomes a Roman religion. While the Roman state was initially suspicious of and hostile to the faith's monotheism, it was seen as a form of atheism and denial of the Roman gods. Once Emperor Constantine converted in the early 4th century, the faith soon became a state religion, used to forge a unity in such a diverse empire. And it was later used by other Roman emperors as a glue to hold the empire together, as we eventually see over the next couple of hundred years a slow decline of the Roman Empire. And Theodosius ordered the closure of all polytheistic temples. This becomes a big deal in the Roman Empire, and it starts the process by which the empire and later all of Europe became overwhelmingly Christian. Now, Buddhism received Ashoka's support and help, but Buddhism never was promoted as India's sole religion. Hinduism was still by far the front runner. But it ultimately was kind of absorbed into Hinduism in India. But in the Roman Empire, there's no renewal of Roman polytheism and the Roman gods. The mythology basically dissipated. And Christianity endured throughout Europe and took up some practices from the Roman world. But both Buddhism and Christianity created networks of cultural connections. And here is a map showing the spread of Buddhism and Christianity that we looked at in class the other day. Christianity in red and Buddhism in green. And like I told you guys, this gives a great perspective on where these religions originated, and in which directions they spread. Okay, now Christianity developed a male hierarchical organization of clergymen. Women were excluded from priesthood. And quickly there was concern for uniform doctrine and practice. Wanted it to be the same across the board. And that's when we see the emergence of the number one bishop of Rome, who's the Pope, and he becomes the dominant leader in Western Europe. And Buddhism really clashed over the interpretation of the Buddhist teachings. A series of councils did not prevent the divisions that eventually happened within the Buddhist philosophies, and there's less sense of right and wrong than with Christian conflicts, and about the choices that you make. And Buddhism did not develop an overall church hierarchy with different levels of priesthood like Christianity did. And that is the conclusion of Section 5, The Birth of Christianity with Buddhist Comparisons.